Everyone here today,
Yes.
coming from so many different places around the globe. So welcome, and hopefully it's warmer where you are than it is where I am because we're having a big snow day today. So I am Lynda Braksiek, and I'm the research lead for knowledge management here at APQC. And I'm joined by my wonderful colleague and friend, our knowledge management fellow, Cindy Hubert, who I'm sure a lot of you know. So we're going to dig in today to some pretty exciting research that is brand new off the shelf and talk about some of the priorities and trends for 2025. So every year, APQC takes the opportunity to survey KM experts and practitioners around the world, and we get to see what you're focusing on from priorities and trends perspective. We had about 340 global participants this year for our survey, and this is really just designed as a pulse check for us on an annual basis to make sure we're staying up on all of the trends and getting to hear from all of you the great things that are going on in your organizations. This initial report, is actually available in our resource library for you to go and download right now. And we continue to add more cuts based on region and company size and some comparative reports along with additional articles and infographics for the next 2 to 3 months. So please keep an eye out on our resource library. Also, we're going to, during this webinar, allow for some time for you to get involved in the conversation as much as possible. We love to use our chat here at APQC, and we know KMers love to have conversations, so please use it at any time. Put your comments, put additional questions, anything that you want to put in that chat, and we will monitor that. We'll also have a couple of opportunities for some polls where we will actually ask you a in-the-moment question where we can have a little more dialogue about it. But as always, we have lots of research we want to get to and talk to you about some of our insights. So we're going to get started. I want to share with you as we begin just some upcoming APQC opportunities, other things you can get involved in if you'd like to. Then we'll dig into the priorities and trends, talking about current areas of focus for KMers, a look ahead, and then some of those key takeaways from our 2025 research. And then, as always, we like to provide you with a resource page. So please take the opportunity to go check that out. It has our latest and greatest research on knowledge management that you can go access. All the links are live. So leverage this PowerPoint. It's going to be available to you along with the recording within a day or so right after this webinar. And then about a few weeks, probably 4 to 5 weeks after, we'll also provide a written summary of this webinar and all the dialogue and chat that happens. All names will be anonymized, so nobody's name or company will be called out, but we like to record all of the activity and discussion that happens. So with that, I'm going to get us started and talk to you just a little bit about upcoming engagements. We always like to tell you about our upcoming webinars. We're going to have a lot of focus this year on the concept of knowledge transfer, and we're going to go deep into that topic with Cindy Hubert again in March, which will be great. We have a couple more webinars coming up May and June, one from our conference sponsor, and then one around the survey that's actually out in the field right now that hopefully all of you have completed around really who are the people of KM? What are those future skills and expertise for KMers? We have a roundtable discussion coming up. And as always, we have some amazing courses. We have a new knowledge transfer specialist certification along with our knowledge manager. So please take a look at these. Again, these are all hot links you can go access. And then, of course, in just under 8 weeks, our annual conference is coming to Houston, Texas. So if y'all can make it, come and join us. It's going to be a lot of great interaction, collaboration. We have presentations from practitioners. We'll have some roundtable discussion opportunities. It's going to be great, as always, to connect with all of our KMers. So with that being said, I'm going to start by talking about some of our priorities and trends for 2025. So we always like to start with the perceived state and kind of that investment level of KM going on in our organizations. And this really didn't change a lot from 2024. We've got 10% that say KM is thriving, which I love. But even more than half are saying that it's continuing to gain ground in their organizations, which I think is a huge positive story. And almost a quarter of people say it's steady state, like we're still moving and grooving, right? We're going forward with KM. Very few are dealing with some decline and free fall. A lot of that has to do with, as you can imagine, the level of investment. It's almost identical, right, across the board. If you don't have some investment in KM, it does tend to lose ground. So those two kind of go hand in hand. But the expected change in KM investment continues to be on a positive trend, increasing at least a little. We have almost half the people say that it's still increasing a little. Almost 20% say it's still increasing a lot, which is an amazing positive story. Some are staying about the same. Again, this kind of aligns with I think where people believe their state of KM is, whether it's steady state or whether it's growing. So this is just a little bit of a look at some of that level of investment and current state of KM. With that, this kind of drives us right into what are those top priorities for KM teams. And I know everyone is totally shocked to see that AI is at the top of the list. We added this new for our 2024 research because, in late 22 is when AI and generative AI first hit the market, right? So it really started to gain ground. So we added it to our priorities survey last year, and it came in at number 2. And it bumped up another 14% this year. So this is where a lot of KM teams are spending time, whether they're in the investigative mode or they're actually implementing and seeing the results of it. It's the number one priority for KM teams. With that being said, I don't think that's a surprise. It's really cool to see that we're still focused on what KM should be focused on, right? We're thinking about transferring knowledge between experts. We're thinking about identifying and prioritizing the critical knowledge in our organizations. And those two in particular stay in the top 3 almost, I think, every year for the last 4 to 5 years, they're in the top 3. So, AI is going to be there to help us do that even better. And we'll dig in further in our research this year and beyond on how does AI help us with transferring knowledge and how does it help us with identifying critical knowledge and that. So, Cindy, did you want to add anything else on this one?
Lynda, I just always think it's interesting in looking at these top priorities on what's driving us. So I looked at my notes from last year at this time, and I think it's interesting how our conversation has changed. Last year, we were really talking about engaging with AI, prompt engineering was so important. I'm sure still important today, but I think we've had a lot more interactions, some pilots, and people are really beginning to see how AI can augment the work. So that whole other AI, augment intelligence, is a big wave. And then of course, Lynda, I love the whole focus on transfer because I do think it's so important. And why do I think it's important? Because transfer gets us all as knowledge managers closer to the use of knowledge, and that's where we see impact. And so the focus on that transfer is still so important. And I'm thankful we have so many tools and capabilities in our tool chest to be able to apply to this so we can really make a difference. So I'm glad it's there.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. And I just mentioned to Cindy earlier today that I was talking to a member just this morning, and they told me a story about how they're leveraging AI for their knowledge transfer process. So I'm really excited to start seeing more examples, specific examples of how they're leveraging some of those tools within the organization. So thank you.
Absolutely, Lynda. We're getting a
Yeah.
lot of people who are talking about going strong with KM and AI. Sawyer, thank you. They've launched an AI answer engine working hard with their KM library. So you guys are just being so creative. It's wonderful.
Oh, nice. I just saw that in the chat. Thank you, Sawyer. Yeah, that's amazing. From Colorado, probably where you have a lot of snow as well. So okay, we're going to jump in. Every year, we try to take a look at what are those outside forces that really might be impacting what we're trying to do from a knowledge management perspective as well. And these are just there's some slight differences to what we talked about last year. And I'm going to start with the bookends of this slide. First of all, data privacy and sustainability have become a big part of our conversations. Always important, but AI is driving more of that dialogue as well, right? We're worried about our IP. We're worried about the security of the information inside of our company not getting out and into the wrong hands, into the competitors, and so on. So data privacy and legal is really taking a center stage. But along with sustainability, and when I say that, I mean the sustainability like we think of when we think of the ESG movement, which is really around that environmental component, because the amount of computing power it takes to run some of these AI engines is as you all know, causing us to build more data centers, and that takes more electricity, and that take right. So there's a whole lot of things that happen downstream from all of this great AI capability that we're having. And I think there's a lot of companies who are looking at these types of things, which is probably why it feels a little slow moving inside of our organizations, because they're thinking about some of these bigger factors. On the opposite end of that, we talk always about the pace of change. Things are changing all the time. We're dealing with so much change in our organization. We've got M&As, people leaving, people retiring, people coming, all of those things. I I I chose this year, and Cindy and I had this conversation. It's the pace of technology right now that's really driving a lot of us, right? All of this AI and what's it going to do, and how does it impact our personal lives, our professional lives, going on in the workplace, our children in school. It's everywhere. This pace of technology. So I think those advancements are really top of mind for all of us right now, and they can be an outside distraction to what we're doing. They can be a great enabler, but it can also be a great distraction to us as well. Yeah, go ahead, Cindy. You're gonna say.
Lynda, just to build on what you said, just to put a little bit of qualitative information, if you guys think about it, back when the internet came on, the internet, everything started building and stuff, our cycles, and I don't remember, you all may remember and can help Lynda and I, there was some Gartner research that talked about just the cycle of technological advances, and they were much longer periods, like I want to say 5 to 7 years, where it wasn't so many abrupt changes. And Lynda's right. Now the exponential, the quantumness of these changes, it's like a daily change.
It is.
And
Yes,
so
it is.
that really causes people, I think it's what drives some of the other things going on, especially in our social and global issues, because technology, we just have higher expectations.
We do. And there's some really great comments, Cindy. Somebody is making a comment about the grid projection, right, for power shortages, that it's going to be happening, right? These are all the things that, like I said, that's that downstream. We're not necessarily thinking about it when we're like, hey, this great new AI tool we can use to lever, to help us with things like knowledge transfer, which is fantastic. But what other impacts does it have? So those can be scary things, and they can be distracting, and they can disrupt. It doesn't keep us from doing good knowledge management, but they're just the things that we have to really keep in mind. And all of this takes us out of our comfort zones, right? So we have to remember how we can help play that role of helping people through this change, all of these changes that are happening in our organization. So the other two that we have on here is impacts to organizational culture. And this was a great one. This was Cindy. We talked a lot about, transformation. We've used that word for several years. And Cindy said, I think it's really about organizational culture right now as well. So I love that, because the disruption of our own organizational culture can cause us to be extremely successful, or it can cause us to be extremely stressed out, or not meet our own personal desires of where we want. I mean, it can have all sorts of impacts. So, Cindy, I'm going to let you talk a little more about the organizational culture disruption.
Yeah, and guys, last year, if you remember, one of the things we were really talking a lot about was transformations, more about with all the digital and the AI coming on and big transformations, your organization's going through shifts and restructuring. Well, I think those are still happening, but I think we've gotten to the next couple of layers down. And that's why I think that the culture piece is something to pay attention to. So there's a little bit of a dark side of this. I was thrilled to see so many of you saying we are thriving and really embracing AI and putting it into our KM capabilities. But some organizations are not. They're either looking at KMers as just another arm for AI. And so there's sort of this disappearing where it just gets absorbed into more technology. There's some programs that are being disbanded completely, just going to own to other priorities, probably because not showing enough impact, not showing their unique contributions. I think, again, I think generations coming in and learning, those learning cycles always play a big 10. So I think we really need to focus ourselves on the culture aspect of knowing that it's a transformation and knowing that we can help transform. And Lynda, that's what I want to say about each one of these. I know we're going to talk about social and global, but guys, if you break these down, the good news is knowledge management can bring a very unique set of capabilities, tools, skills, behaviors to each of these. Lynda was describing them with the whole data privacy and sustainability. We've been talking about that for years with content management. And one of our good friends on our KM council, Dave Boland, said, he said, maybe we're being too purist when it comes to data, information, content, knowledge. Our users just want what they want when they need it. And that's something to pay attention to do. How do we step in and really say, we can be part of this strategic picture and help people figure this out and be part of the equation? And I think for each one of these, Lynda, the change with the cultural issues, connecting people, helping people transition through the disruptions, giving leaders messaging, the same with the technology, being there to make sure people understand how to use it. And then, of course, with the social and global issues, Lynda, helping people stay connected.
Yeah. The connected, I've always thought of knowledge management as the great connectors, you know. Someone said that to me many years ago in my career, and they're like, you're just the connector to everyone in the organization. And I said, that's true. That's what knowledge management does. We help to connect people to each other and to the information they need, and we help them through those changes. So keep that in mind as we talk about some of our opportunities and our upcoming skill sets for KMers. You'll see there's a pattern here, right? We're here as first responders, as knowledge management professionals always should be. We're there to help through some of those times of uncertainty and disruptions. And the final one on here, the social and global, as you know, things change, right? Political environments can change things. They can be disruptive to regulations and to budgets and things like that, which can impact us in our jobs, and it can impact us personally if we happen to lose our job or things shift. Also, personally, people get very attached to their belief systems, right? And when things are going not so well around the world, whether it's war or political things that are happening, it can be very disruptive in the workplace as well. And how do we address those things, and how do we keep people grounded in the organization through those things? So I don't know that a couple of these are ever going to go away, Cindy, right? Social and global issues and the organizational culture, it's always such a big part of being a KMer, and I think it's just good for us to keep it in mind. So with that being said, I'm going to ask you all on the call, what else? What are we missing? Like, these are the things we're thinking and talking about based on some of our conversations. But in the chat, if you don't mind, throw in there what other outside forces might be influencing knowledge management in your organization right now. We'd love to hear more about that. And I think Lauren's Lauren Hayes, who's on the call with us, our research manager here at APQC, is going to join. Yep, she did. She threw the question in there for you. So data quality, generational shifts for sure. That's a good one.
Yes.
Yep. And governance, moving from fragmented to consolidated, global, moving things to global. We had that conversation yesterday in another meeting, Cindy, didn't we?
Sure
Talked
did,
about
guys. That whole decision of, do we stay centralized? Do we do hybrid? Do we go decentralized?
Yep.
There's no wrong or right answer. Some might be better. You just have to consider. Oh, I love information safety. Yep, we're into
I saw that. Yeah, SMEs hoarding their time and lack of content ownership. It's always a problem somewhere, it seems like. Leadership buy-ins out there, keeping up with legislative changes. Yeah, that's kind of that social and global thing. You know, we've had a change of administration here in the United States, and it's impacting some of those things, right? Regulations change, laws change, funding changes, and that impacts all of us. Reorganizations, M&As, entering new markets. Oh, that's a great one. I like that.
Yes.
Trump.
And I love new
Data center.
administration changes. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speed
Everybody.
of technology. Yeah. And just the pace of change in general. You're right, Liz. Like, it's just things move, not just technology, but everything. We're expected to move faster all the time. So these are some great answers. Thank you guys so much. Love pulling on your expertise and brilliance to help us take our research and our conversation even further. So, all right, we're going to jump in now to look at some of those current areas of focus. So we'll share a little research with you here. Feel free to keep putting some comments in, things you agree, don't agree, have a different concept or topic about. Feel free to share it. We'd love it. The opportunities for KM to capitalize on. This is that we had six this year because we had a couple ties, so that's why we have six. I always like to keep it at five, but we've got six this year. But at the top of the list, you can see is not surprising that this is an opportunity, big opportunity for KM. And I think it's fantastic that so many companies that have knowledge management capabilities are getting to be a part of the AI solution. A, it makes sense. Uh, B, knowledge management people know what's going on around the organization and understand the culture and can help with that. But C, what an opportunity for what is normally a fairly small group of people in knowledge management getting to be part of something so amazing and big. So I mean, kudos to everyone for all that you're doing in your organizations. The other things that are opportunities that tend to remain opportunities is that, yep, employees don't like that disorganized information and too many repositories and they get frustrated. And we've got retirements, we've got churn going on. So we have to think about knowledge transfer. What did we just hear the other day? The term from one of our sponsors for the conference, they're calling it the great retirement, right? We're losing a lot of people right now. How do we deal with that? There's two on here about leaders, which I think is good from an opportunity perspective. Leaders are recognizing the risk of knowledge gaps. That's good that they're focusing on it. And more leaders are recognizing and treating knowledge as an actual strategic asset, which is huge. So I think those are two positive things to see as opportunities. Now, there's work to be done, but they are definitely opportunities for KMers and they're seeing it as such, which is great. So then on the flip side, we talk about threats. And these threats have not changed. Every year I look back at the research and it's pretty much always the same things that we see as threats and kind of barriers to what we're trying to do. Doesn't mean we're not doing good work in KM, but it just means we have to keep these things in mind. We've always got employees who have too much to do and they don't think they have time to do knowledge management, which is why our focus has to be getting it into the flow of their everyday work, right? KM is hard to measure, no doubt about it. We've got tons and tons of research on measures, and we've got great research on measures. It's still hard. And a lot of it is subjective and qualitative, and sometimes that's difficult to capture, difficult to sell, and to influence leaders with that information. But there's a lot of ways to tangibly measure the value of knowledge management as well. Um, Another thing is leaders, I talked about leaders on the opportunity side, they also show up on the threat side. Sometimes they don't get it. Sometimes they don't think it's a priority. And when they get into cost problems or other issues, sometimes the first thing is let's cut those what we think of as support functions. Well, we don't want to be seen as a support function, right? We want to be part of that critical strategic capability for our organization. So it's our jobs to help our leaders kind of see that. So, there's always the cultural issue. Sometimes cultures aren't accommodating to knowledge management. You can have leadership changes that shift the culture, right? All of those things are those threats that we have to keep in mind, along with the ongoing and constant dealing with a lot of change, right? So
Yeah.
those are the threats. Go ahead, Cindy. You're gonna say something.
Lynda, I love matching that slide with the threats back with the disruptions, because I
Yeah,
think if you can say, okay, this is like more granular, right? So if you can
it
kind
is.
of come back and peel the layers to really identify your opportunities and say, okay, if they're overworked and don't think they have time for KM, what does that mean in terms of those disruptions we're feeling? And that takes you into that deeper analysis to let you really pinpoint the products you're providing them, the capabilities, the services you're offering to go along with those capabilities. And it'll really help you target some of the things. Because guys, I think the one thing I'm seeing is, and it's not a bad thing, but yet it is, our KM teams they get spread too thin, and you're trying to do everything and you get so tactical, you can't get up and see that bigger picture. So, Lynda, it's about alignment, focus, and simplification of what we're doing.
It is. It is. And I was reading through
Yeah,
some of the comments while you were talking as well. And
good.
it's yeah, no, it's good. I like somebody said something about revising job descriptions to include KM responsibilities, right? That is something that does make it more intentional. When it becomes part of your day-to-day job, people don't feel like it's extra. Oh, I'm being measured on this. This is something of value to the organization. So it's a great example of how you begin to build it into the flow of people's work. So great example. Thanks for all the comments. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, now top technologies, again, not surprising. Last year, we added to this list of technologies the generative AI component. We separated it out just to see where it would fall, and it jumped to number one this year. It was, I think it was number two or three last year, but it jumped to number one this year. You can see all of the focus is really in the top focus is really in that AI space. I thought it was interesting to watch the drop from team collaboration tools. From 2023, 57% down to 32%. And Cindy and I were looking at that, and I said, I don't think anybody cares less about collaboration tools. I just think that we've got a handle on it a little bit more, right? That post-COVID world that really forced us, or COVID and then post-COVID forced us to really work in a collaborative cloud-based environment. And we're sustaining, continuing to improve and maintaining that, but it's not our number one priority. So curious if anyone has thoughts on that too. It's not that we've taken our eye off that ball. It's just that the priorities do shift when we have new technologies to go chase, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and Lynda, it could mean that we're also trying to get ourselves cleaned up in terms of helping people access, finding files. That's all part of that drivers of collaboration to get
It
people
is.
both connected, organized, and getting the information they need.
Yeah. Those are those traditional, that's been around for a while.
Yeah,
We've been focused on
yeah.
cloud tools. We've been focused on, search, but now it's a little bit more intelligent and AI-based search, right? So we're just continuing to improve those capabilities over time. We've still got focuses on knowledge graphs and things like that. And there's multiple other things down lower on the list. These just happen to be the top five. So it's just something for us to keep in mind. And it's AI is out there to recommend content, but it's also out there to create new content. So love to hear people's stories about what they're working on first and what's working. What are those use cases? So I'm going to keep going and just because this is a little bit of just showing you what we're seeing. The business priorities is another question that we ask. What are those key business priorities that KM is really there to support within your organization right now? And again, this is, we did some changing to our survey in 2024. So now it's fun to see the trends happening, at least for the second year. We added that operational efficiency and process improvement component to the business priorities, and it came in at number one last year when it was new, and it stayed number one. And a little bit of this is likely driven by some of those AI promises of efficiency gains and things like that. Productivity is still important. I think some people might think of some of those things interchangeably a little bit, that if we improve our efficiencies and our processes, we're going to gain on productivity as well. The cool thing is later this year, my colleague, Maddie Lundquist, who is our research lead for process, and I are going to be doing a joint research study on productivity. So we'll get to see how productivity is impacted by both process and knowledge management. And this is a study that was done about 5 years ago at APQC. So we're really excited to redo that research and see what comes out of that. That'll really help you tell that story of value, again, for knowledge management as it relates to productivity. So interesting. Sorry, Cindy, I turned my head and I realized you were going to speak. Go
You
ahead.
know what? So I love the chat. And Lynda, there's
Oh,
one
yeah.
chat that says there's a misconception that an AI tool alone will solve knowledge problems. Not in my organization. Good. Thank you, Hayden. We are
Mhm.
just about to introduce a tool to support. And that was going to be my comment, Lynda. It certainly is true. If you include productivity as kind of an efficiency view as well, I mean, it's big, right? Efficiency, productivity. I think a lot of AI is driving that. But as we discussed yesterday, all of those other things are really important for KM and they're on there. But
Yep.
the whole employee experience, that we can't lose sight of that. I don't know, I think it's not a priority because we think, okay, we're there, but I
Yeah,
think it's got to be it's one of the drivers that make all these other things happen.
it
So
is.
that's a big one. I just don't want us to lose sight of all these other things that are important that kind of boost up all the work that's being done around AI. That work in AI
Absolutely.
should impact continuous learning.
Well, and the other thing to remember too, and I should have stated this at the beginning, this particular question allows you to choose three. So,
Good
a lot of
point.
people were choosing the operational efficiency, but they're also choosing learning and
Yeah.
strategic integration right along with it. So the fact that all of these remain and these same probably 5 to 7 stay in that kind of top seven every year as well. It's always about data-driven decisions and continuous learning. And we don't take our eye off the ball for that. but we do look for new ways to help it become more efficient and more effective, right? So love that comment. And I love the comment that like I didn't see the chat till you mentioned it, Cindy, but absolutely AI is not going to fix everything, right? We know that as KMers, it's our job to help people see that it's an enabler, but we still have work to do. We still have humans to interact with it. They have to train the machines, they have to validate the outputs, all of that. So great comments on that. Okay. We like to talk about the user experience as well, and we call it the KM user experience because it's really these are our stakeholders. We're thinking about the people in our organization that we're serving with the knowledge management approaches that we're putting in place. And we like to ask the question around what is the most important aspect of that user experience going forward? What are we thinking about? Is it about getting those knowledge management capabilities in the flow, directly in the flow of work, so it doesn't feel extra? Is it about making it simplified? Is it about making it automated so that their jobs are easier and faster? So you can see that in the flow is that about almost a third of the people still say that embedding it directly in the work is one of our greatest opportunities going forward, right, to help our users. But that automated piece is a new one we added last year, and it's moving up. It moved up 5% from last year, and I have a feeling it's going to continue to move up as we go forward. A, because we have the tools to do it now, but B, also because I think the employees want it. I think they want to get rid of some of those basic, the less desirable things to do every day so they can use their brains a little bit more and do some deep thinking and collaborate with their colleagues and so on. And then simplified is up there as well at about 21%. The personalized knowledge, the anticipatory, and really digging into the deep, they're important, but they're just not at the top of the list from a user experience. We're still focused on getting it in the flow, making it simple, and automating as much as we can to make people's lives a little bit easier. Okay, with that, I think we're going to go to our first poll. We have a couple of polls today in the webinar. And this one is about, I want to know how AI, after all this conversation around the priorities and what we're focused on, how is AI actually impacting the knowledge management efforts in your organization? So any efforts, the rollout of strategy, the budget, the priorities, the approaches you're putting in place. And I tried to cover everything from it's just giving us visibility to it's not even a priority for us yet. So let us know what you're thinking. Very curious.
Yeah.
How you're thinking about AI.
I just laughed when Lynda gave this. I said, oh my gosh, Lynda, we can only pick one of these because I suspect, I suspect just from talking to some of our members, there are some parts of the organization who, hey, it's going forward. We're doing some of this to support, but yet then we have other parts that say, not doing as much, or it's all AI. And so if you live in that decentralized world or even hybrid for knowledge management, sometimes it's hard to get your arms around what exactly is going on. It's all over the board.
It is. Maybe we should have had this one be a little bit more of a multiple choice. You could choose, or a multiple answer. Sorry, you could choose 2 or 3. But pick the one that you think is the closest to really what's aligning, how AI might be impacting your organization today. Do we have enough there, Lauren, for our poll to see? I'm curious to see some results here.
No.
We've got about 61% of people who've participated.
All right. We'll give it just another minute or two. And if you're struggling to pick one, feel free to throw in the chat if you say, hey, I've got all 5 of these, or I've got, a couple more of these, and that's okay too.
Yeah. John, you made a great comment in the chat about many executives don't quite get the connection between KM and AI. It's interesting, John. I actually asked that. I said, define artificial intelligence and what it can do for you, and define KM. And even with the newness of AI and Gen AI, they were much easier to find what all AI could do opposed to what KM could do for us. So I put that back on KM, saying we got to do a better job of talking about what we do to enable all of this stuff. We've been around a lot longer.
Absolutely. I think I just lost the results somewhere, Lauren. Oh, there they are. Trying to manage my screen here. Oh my gosh, it's all over the place.
Lynda. Yeah.
Well, we had 15% that said it's not a priority yet, which and I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we do talk to a lot of members that aren't doing anything with AI yet. And that's okay. Everyone is on their own journey, you know, so make sure you call that out when you don't, and that's okay. KM is not part of the AI strategy or implementation, is at 21%, Cindy. So we've still got but we've also got 24% who are partnering on AI solutions with KM. So it's kind of all over the place a little bit, and we've got all the different levels of interaction and engagement and focus from different businesses. And Cindy, do you think it's I'm starting to think that sometimes it's the industry or the size of the business as well. I'm starting to see some trends there, but then it's something else will break that trend for me, right?
Oh,
So I don't.
It's almost, so this is all adoption stuff, right? Trying to figure out what works and then how do we adopt really fast and then scale. And it's almost like I want to take what these responses look like today and plot them on a spectrum, right? This is a spectrum. Here's where we're going and where do we want to be? That may be the best way for all of us to look at it, is saying, if we're here now and there's no investment, should we be part of that investment doing it? Because I guarantee somebody's investing in AI,
Yeah.
where they're shadowing, they're doing their own
Yes.
thing and nobody
Yeah.
knows about it. But
Exactly.
I think that's where, from KMers, that would be my advice. Figure out where you are. What do you want to do first? What do you think you can, what is your unique contribution that you can make a difference? And just keep trying to push forward with that to get a lot of visibility on what KM can do for you.
Yeah. And remember, one of the biggest things that we see from knowledge management teams that are making some progress, partnering, being a part of that AI conversation, is they're contributing to the best use cases in their organization, because KMers tend to see what's happening and understand the business priorities, help to identify those impactful use cases, right? For your company to go forward with, solve the problems, help them solve problems. That's what we do. And yeah, I was going to comment on Joseph. Thank you, Joseph. Joseph Pisari from Novartis is talking about how KM is actually leading on the AI solutions. And if you didn't catch it, they did a webinar for us back in November, and it was brilliant. And you can hear lots of great best practices about how they're approaching AI. And there's a lot on their change management approach to that as well. So check out their webinar, and the summary article from that webinar will give you some really great insights into how a company is actually really moving forward with KM at the helm for AI. So that's great. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving along. We're going to look at the trends in the future. So this is where we look. And I know I just showed you the slide on technologies, but we always ask the question as well, what about in the next 3 years? Where are you going to be focused? So not much difference here in this case. But the generative AI piece did jump up quite a bit, even from we're working on it right now, but we know we have to work on it again in the future. So all eyes are on that generative AI component and what that can do for the organization, and continuing to use, I'll say, more traditional AI for, search impacts and recommending and surfacing content and expertise for people. Again, the interesting thing on this in the next 3 years is the collaboration tools didn't show up at all in the top 5. So I say that because we're always going to be part of that game from a KM perspective, right? How are our communities connecting? How are our networks connecting? How are we helping to minimize the number of repositories that exist in the organization? So we can't take our eyes off of that ball as well. It just is not at that top priority, but it's in that more steady state. And I'm sure someday it'll shift again, right? When we have some changes in that tool capability as well. So this is just a look at where people are going to be focused, not surprisingly, going forward. Now, I wanted to throw a little bit of, I'll say, secondary research in here. This is from McKinsey, and a lot of you probably read a lot of this kind of information from different organizations. But I thought this one was kind of interesting because this was McKinsey's report, and I put a link in here if anybody wants to see it. It's kind of interesting, but talking about their 2025 insights on AI. And they said almost all companies, and the number was actually 92%, are investing in some way in AI, but just 1% believe they're actually at any sort of maturity. right? So think about how much work we still have yet to do, and think about how KM can contribute to that going forward. So find, like Cindy said, find who's doing it, find out who's funding it. It's probably going on somewhere in your organization. Get to know them and help them through that process. But they also, I liked Mackenzie's comment on here that said the biggest barrier to scaling is not the employees, or even you can see the other bullet on here, or the technology, but it's the leaders. From people's perspective, that we're not moving fast enough, right? Let's get those privacy issues figured out. Let's get the legal issues figured out. The technology is not a problem. And guess what? Employees are ready for it because they're using it in their day-to-day lives. Their kids are using it. Everybody's using it, and they want it to be something that they can use in the workforce as well. It kind of reminds me of when, search functions first came out and everybody said, we need Google in the workplace, right? And we all know it's harder to do it inside of an organization than it is, as a consumer on the outside. So I think the same is true for AI. We've got to make it work for our organization. We've got to trust our leaders, that they're doing this. But I just thought this was interesting, and this is in general on AI, not related to knowledge management, of course, but look at how we can help with this. This is a big innovation powerhouse right now, and we get to be a part of it as KMers, right? So how can we help with this? Read this study, take a look at some of the trends that are happening in general around AI, and how can you engage your knowledge management team in this? And with that being said, Cindy started this conversation with me several months ago that, okay, we've got this AI component. What can we really be doing to harness it from a knowledge management perspective, but also from an expert's perspective? And I like this delineation because as knowledge managers and knowledge management specialists and leaders and CKOs, we rely on our experts for everything that we do. We're there to make their lives more efficient, to transfer the knowledge from one generation to the next, to do all the things to ensure that the expertise in our organization is preserved and carries forward for competitive advantage. So it's important that we understand we have a role, but so do our experts. And when we talk about harnessing AI, KM, we can do those things. We can upskill ourselves and teach others. We can partner with the business. What are those business use cases that we can be focusing on? How can we help with strategy? How can we leverage foundational knowledge management with this as well? What do we do with AI for our existing community program? What do we do with AI for our existing lessons learned capability, right? Think about how all of these things work together. And from a KM perspective, I think even more important is we can really be there to help prepare the culture because we understand it and we have those change management skill sets that are needed. And we're continuing to hone those to help our organizations through a major transition like this. So this is just a little bit about what KM can do. And then on the expert side, I like this part because how do we leverage our experts? They too can upskill and teach AI skills, but they also can be there to train the machines and evaluate the AI outputs because they have the expertise. They know if the answer is right or wrong, and they can continue to train those machines to make them smarter, faster, and better for the future, right? That helps enrich the content, and it helps us to advance our ability to become better, innovative thinkers for going forward in the future. And that's a big competitive advantage for our organizations. And not to mention, this stuff is fun, right? We all get to be a part of something new. I mean, you got to put the fun in there. So go ahead,
That
Cindy.
was good, Lynda. It is fun. Hey, so I want to build on what Lynda says. I think this is one thing we forget as KMers and sometimes expert. Remember, your sole purpose is to help the asset called knowledge move around the organization. There's a whole APQC defines it in 7 steps. So when you start breaking this down, I think you have to go back to the raw asset we deal with, which is knowledge, because I think you can get all these bells and whistles that AI is bringing us, even our foundational KM, which is, communities, lessons, things. We did them because we needed knowledge to move somehow. So don't forget that. That is what anchors us in terms of helping us think through these things. What knowledge is most critical? Yes, it's growing exponentially with AI, and we've had some great comments that say, yeah, but you feed knowledge to different models, you get different things. Well, how in the world do you know it's the best source of truth then, the best practice? And that's where you can start using some of these capabilities that we know that work. So
Absolutely.
just think it's an opportunity.
All right, I'm going to keep us moving because as always, we get excited talking about this stuff. We want to
Mhm.
make sure we get all the cool data for you to see. We're going to talk about the skill sets for KM to develop. A number fourth year in a row, actually. We only show three here, but change management's still at the top of that list. And so is design thinking and human-centric design. And I'm going to put that one on the shelf for right now because I'm going to dig deeper into that one this year as well, because I'm really interested in how that continues to show up as number two on our list, that design thinking, human-centric design. And I think we need to dig a little deeper on that. Maybe a roundtable or something later this year would be kind of exciting on that topic. But the change management component, it's we have a lot of research on this now, and it's one of my passion areas as well, because you can't shift to a knowledge sharing culture if you're not helping people shift the behaviors and how they work, right? It's just so critical. It's such a critical component. So I like that it's at the top, but I also think, what are we doing to continue to get better at this, right? Are we not doing enough to learn, leverage the capabilities that are out there in the industry to help us with change management? So, and I know I think I'm a little bit behind on time here, so I'm going to go ahead and shift a little bit. I want to show you, this was from our change management research we did just late last year. And I thought this was interesting. It's not surprising, but those companies that are at a higher level of a maturity perspective, and again, this is a self reported level of maturity. This isn't a formal assessment that anyone did when they took this survey, but they report themselves as being at least that you were in a pretty steady state of knowledge management. We're continuing to optimize our capabilities. Look how much more they invest in change management upskilling than those that are at the early stages of knowledge management. So it's just there as a reminder that if you're in a new team of knowledge management, you're starting it up for the first time, maybe it's not very mature in your organization, think about that change management component and what can you do? Because if you're not impacting the culture and getting out there and understanding your sponsorship and understanding your stakeholders and communicating and doing all those things and training that needs to be done, it could hold you back just a little bit. So think about that and where you're spending your time investing in some of those change management upskilling opportunities. So I just wanted to share that with you. And again, I mentioned that we're going to be having some research come out on who are the people of knowledge management. So we're going to dig deeper into these skill sets and capabilities and experience levels of people who work in the field of knowledge management. So there will be more to come on this topic. Okay, so we have a second poll. And we did research a few years ago on the barriers to knowledge sharing. Because we're talking about culture, I want to know, what are those things that are kind of keeping knowledge management capabilities or knowledge sharing from happening within your organization? And this one, you do get to choose three. So we gave you an opportunity to choose more.
There will be
Yeah.
barriers, Lynda.
Yeah. This is going to help drive us into how do we talk more about those at a deeper level, those true barriers to knowledge sharing and implementing knowledge management in our organization. And these are some of the things that we found in our research a few years ago. So I'm curious if they're still the same or if we've got new barriers out there. So there is an other here. So you can choose other, type it in the chat if you've got an other category that we're missing.
Yeah, because you guys, Lynda and I were talking about this, and things have shifted through this. I think some of these are just core and evergreen, but I think that you all are probably dealing with some things, even if you need to get more granular on some of these. We're very interested
Mm-hmm.
in what
Yep,
they are,
absolutely.
what's prohibiting.
And I'm trying to think if there's any that might need so like when we say experience, that's kind of do people have enough experience? I think of it as two ways. Do they have the experience that they feel is even adequate to share with others? Do they have the experience in working in a knowledge sharing culture? Do they even know what that looks and feels like? Are they expected? Have they ever been expected to do it before? Right? That's what I think about when I think about experience. Oh, legal. There you go.
Thank you, Ellen. And then, yeah, the
Great one.
disconnection.
Compliance and legal. Yep,
Yep.
absolutely.
And then lack of awareness. That's really a good one.
Yeah.
It's not being.
Yeah.
Silos. Gosh, silo busters. I know. Thank you, Nikki.
Those are good. This gives us an idea on not understanding KM. Yeah, that's that awareness component. No strategy.
Yeah. Jackie, I agree.
You know,
Education.
that's a good point. The no strategy. Sometimes we start to do random acts of KM as we talk about. And if there's no strategy for it, you can have some goodness in pockets, right? But what does it bring value at the greatest level that it can? Yeah, changing old habits, that culture, silos, apprehension. Go ahead and show us the poll results, Lauren.
Oh, time. I love it. Time.
Wow. I'm surprised at knowledge hoarding, actually. Wow, that's really high.
I've been hearing that from a lot of our members saying, yeah, I think AI is driving some of that,
Interesting.
guys. It's my suspicion.
Interesting. That's an interesting one.
Suspect.
Time doesn't surprise me. Distance, thank goodness, that's no longer, like that used to be a much bigger
Yeah, we may have,
barrier.
legal
But
may have come over that. Trust is always big. Agreed.
culture is at 50% in awareness. Yeah. That's where that change management capability comes into play, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Interesting. Well, fascinating. We will be doing more on barriers and digging. We can dig into each one of these and let's figure out how to go solve some of these. Thank you guys for your feedback.
Your chats are your
Yeah,
comments.
they are. The chats are fabulous. I can't wait to go back and read them all in greater detail. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get to just those takeaways now that we're getting close to the top of the hour here. And this is just a little fun Wordle. We ask the final question of our survey is an open text, open-ended question that just says, basically tell us where you believe the future of knowledge management is headed. And, it still is top of mind for a lot of business leaders. It is, people see the value. You can look at the words here. You see big knowledge management shows up because people use that word a lot, but you can see AI in there. You see leaders, you see value, people. I love that people and data are big because that's what we focus on, right? People and data, organizations, grow, content, insights. I see human in there. I just love looking at all the words that pop up from all the feedback that we got. And I might take all of these and go just a little bit deeper with this too. This is just the Wordle, but we can dig a little bit deeper with some of this and figure out some of those amazing, brilliant comments that we got back from people. But I think it's nice to see still that we're thinking about it. It's about business, it's about content, it's about data, it's about people, it's about technology, right? We're kind of all in that same place. So I love this, and I love that people like to share their future thoughts. So from a key takeaways perspective for 2025 and beyond, this is a um, Lynda sits down and writes what she thinks based on the research. And then we talk with Cindy and we talk with Darcy Lemons, our other expert in knowledge management, and Lauren Hayes at APQC. And we come up with what we believe based on some of the research and our own experiences. And I'd love to hear more. We're going to talk through a little bit of this, but please put what you believe your biggest takeaways for 2025 are going forward in the chat if you would like. But I think, we can't, I can't not put first that AI is urgent right now for a lot of people, right? That's what we're thinking about. That's what we're working on. And it does continue to impact KM priorities and funding, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively, right? So what are we going to do as knowledge management teams to make sure that we've got that seat at the table and we're part of that strategy because we can help with that. We are knowledge management is definitely keen to be a part of this era, I'll say, and it's been a really exciting couple of years. I started at APQC just under 2 years ago, and it was right when the generative AI bubble hit, and I went, "Whoa!" this just dove. I got to dive right in right away, so it's been amazing. We talked about the data privacy and sustainability. I think that's going to start hitting us even harder as we go further into this AI era. And I love the operational efficiency component for our business priorities. And even though I believe it's driven some by the AI and automation demands, there's a lot we can do from the process side of this as well. This is where we partner with our process colleagues and making sure that we're operating as efficiently as possible. I was talking to a member yesterday, I think it was, and they said, I don't do anything in KM without understanding the process first. Right? I always start with the process. I have to know what people are doing before I can help them do it more efficiently. I want to know who the experts are at every step of the process. And I love that. I just think it's a great way to partner with our process counterparts. We talked about the user experience, something to always keep in mind that in the flow, Cindy is something that is at the top of it's always on our radar for knowledge management, but it's still so challenging, right?
Yeah, it's
Get it
hard.
in the
Yeah,
flow of people's work, not make it extra.
absolutely. In the flow is where transfer happens the best, where
It is.
people learn and they're making mistakes or they're executing.
That's
And so
right.
it is important to make it simple and get it there for them.
And transfer is happening and it's not even it's intentional because it's part of the flow of your work now, but you didn't go out seeking to do it. You're just doing your job, and you're doing it in a way now that is automatically transferring knowledge, right, to the people who need it, which I love. I like the change management component of this, because like I said, it's always been a passion of mine. If I don't know who I'm helping and why I'm helping them, and they don't understand why they need knowledge management, then we're probably not doing our jobs quite well enough yet, right? I mean, they need to understand why it's important to share knowledge, why it's important to capture this, why it's important to learn these new tools. And we're really just there to help them, so let's keep continuing to focus on building those skill sets as best as we possibly can. And change has become a big part of our knowledge management essentials, right, here at APQC from a research perspective as well. So we've got data on it, we've got classes on it, all of that stuff. And I'm going to let Cindy talk about this next bullet because she's got a passion around this right now, this convergence that's taking place.
Yes, and it's nothing new. You guys are just experiencing it. And this is me going back to saying, don't forget to just pay attention to our raw assets. But we have taken that we KMers have taken more of that purist. We're here to deal with explicit knowledge, but yet everything we do, everything that has knowledge in it has data, information, content records, things are embedded in it. We know that from content management. And so I think it's just time for us to really watch. AI's driving a lot of this, of course. It's coming together. We're seeing some knowledge management programs say, strategically, we can take all of this under our umbrella and just understand the skills and capabilities. And so just pay attention to that, because that convergence is important. Your user just wants it, as I said, how they want it. They're not concerned what it is. And I think we've got to really rise up and make sure we understand who's in charge and how the governance around it, how it's working.
Yeah, I think it's great. And, the final couple things I'll say about these takeaways for me is that, the traditional KM priorities remain critical and necessary for us, even in this era and this world of AI right now. How do we continue to keep, if we have a community program, we have lessons learned, we have knowledge transfer capabilities, we already have enterprise search engines, we already have learning strategy, anything that you're doing for KM right now still remains critical and necessary. The AI component is there to help augment that and help it become more effective and efficient. And so I think it's really important. My takeaways are always going to be, don't take your eye off the ball in some of those traditional priorities that work for your organization. It might be different for yours than it is for mine, but don't take your eye off the ball of those things that are important to your organization. We have examples of people using AI for enhancement of their communities, right? Or using it for enhancement of their knowledge transfer approaches or lessons learned, things like that. So it's important to remember those, and to remember that, ultimately KM is about getting real business results. The measures that are most important are that we're advancing the business measures in our organization, and everything we do is contributing to the improvement of those in particular. So make sure you're keeping aligned to those business priorities. We're not doing AI for AI's sake. We're not doing KM for KM's sake. We're doing it for, right, the business. And that's always kind of our mantra. And I always think about what Carla Odell, our chairman of the board for APQC and longtime expert and mentor of many of us, says, is she said, you never know when something's going to change in the organization. You always need to have that value proposition in your back pocket at every point in time in your career. You need to be able to speak to it, talk to the influence, provide examples, be able to shift if you need to from one priority to another, but you need to understand that value proposition for the organization, because we're here to help them, to succeed. So with that, Cindy, I will let you have a couple of final words as well with this priorities research today.
Lynda, I hope everybody will take this and dig into it. I told Lynda, I said, do you realize how deep we could go on every one of these points? So whatever fits into your scope of work, take the data, because it'll help support what you're trying to do. And we are always here if you need us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very
And if you have any further questions for Cindy, myself, Lauren Hayes, Darcy Lemons, any of us part of the KM team at APQC, our contact information is in this deck. Put it in the chat. We're happy to get back to you. And as always, our resources are available, and these are all hot links, so you don't have to go looking for it, trying to make it easy for you to go access some of this information. And look forward to some future webinars and roundtables this year that will help us to dig deeper, as Cindy said, into each of the topics that we talked about today. This was our high-level view. Now we get to dig even deeper. And I can't tell you how excited I am to go back and read all of these chats, because you guys are amazing. I can't even keep up. It's scrolling so fast. I love the inputs. I love the brilliance. I love the interaction. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a beautiful rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Lynda.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.